So look, we started with red, we've then gone blue, and we're now going to do something different again and kind of talk about people and strategy, which is a little bit different again, right? So for those of us that have been in this game for a little while now, you know, you start one place and you move around and you end up moving to something that Lynore's going to talk about today usually. So please make Lynore feel welcome.
So not your average cyber strategy, tying in co-design. Here we go. This is my first speaking conference in Brisbane. So a little bit about me. My big three is Gemini, Aries, and a Gemini. So if you know what that means, hands up. Okay. No one knows what that means? Okay, but then you don't get astrology. I'm currently 10 years in tech. I have recently finished a business degree. I am not a leader, nor am I a manager in my current role. But I do have lived experience for at least 30-something years being a team member. So I've seen things, how they develop, how they don't work, what can they do, what goes wrong. That's my background. And pretty much just trust me, it's going to be a journey, and we're going to get there eventually. So why am I talking about this topic? Any CISOs here? If you see this one, we can see in crisis, struggling, surviving, thriving. I think in team, you go from here to there, kind of thing. You know, in cybersecurity, we kind of sit between the struggling and in crisis. But if you're not a CISO, you might see this one, which is up and across. You know, sometimes it's one would be sad. It's so over. It is what it is. I hear that all the time. But if you're high energy, then you're just like balling, right? But then if you're sad, you're just like, oh my God, I want to go home and cry, pretty much. So going through that journey, I've thought, how do we make our jobs easier? Why are we doing all this uplift, all this work, and still sitting in, mum would be so sad? So yeah, I do want to highlight some stats to give some extra background. There's 0% of Indigenous Australians in cyber. I'm Indigenous myself. I think that's important to acknowledge. There's under 400 of us. 1 in 5 of us are neurodiverse, so that goes back to this. We always have depression, anxiety, ADHD, any of those. The WGEA thing came out recently, and as a woman, I do want to highlight we only 20% of CEOs and 34% are in key management personnel. Might not be the right audience, but I do want to say it as I have a microphone. Cybercrime is targeting $9.5 trillion in 2024, so it just goes back to that whole burnout thing. Boardroom communication gaps. We need to communicate with our boardroom. And how do we do that if we're not actually leaders or CISOs? And as the other kicker, we all know, we always hear about it, cyber skills shortage. It is always going to remain an issue. Organisations are struggling to find qualified personnel. But what if the qualified personnel already exist within your organisation but aren't cyber people per se? And that's where I come in with co-design. What is co-design? It is a purposely collaborative operation model working with people. We're working with other people who are not necessarily in cyber or are cyber adjacent. We do this to identify and understand what the problems are. We all have different problems. If I'm trying to secure something, but I'm not an expert, I need to talk to someone who is an expert and create those and facilitate those relationships. It is working through a problem over and over. It's a bit of iterative design. You see a lot of this in actually UI, UX design. It's very human-centric. At the heart of the co-design process, it's improving consumer outcomes. Our consumers are the people that we work with. They're also our customers, but your consumer that you talk to on your day-to-day could be a GRC person, could be your HR person, could just be Bob down the road. They are what you need to work with, or who you need to work with. So your co-design principles. It is outcomes focused, inclusive. We need to be aware of what is going on in around our things. It's participative, so always put your hand up so you can talk to it and be involved. It's respectful. You need to respect each other to be involved in this. And adaptive. It goes back to that whole iteration. You need to be swift like a coursing river. I'm just going to go into it. Some of these principles. It is, how do we get this bread? You've got to have some outcomes when you do this principle design. The why, it's understanding the stakeholder needs. getting those clear objectives, iterative improvements, slowly and surely getting there. It also is inclusive. Going back to that first couple of stats, we have really diverse workplaces. We are one and we are powerful. Or if you go to the Australian one, we are one, but we are many. Aussie, Aussie, oi, oi, oi. The why, it's diverse participants, it's collaborative. I like co-working with people. I like to come in and have a chat. I'm probably an oddball that I actually like talking to people, and going back to being a Gemini, I'm very chatty. But I think fostering these relationships makes for a more stronger workforce. If I know what Jan's doing and what Bob's doing, and if they're doing secure things insecurely, what the WTF? If the kids in the room, I apologise. And it's that collaboration that you will get things going through. Participative. Co-design should not be tokenistic consultation. When we do this, we should actually hear and see what people are saying. We can't come in as security people and going, okay, you're doing this, but it's wrong. Why are they doing that? We should be asking these questions, understanding what's going on, trying to understanding the whole solution or problem, like asking that why. And I know we're not really huggers, but sometimes talking to those people and a bit friendly, you get the why. Respectful. It is an eggplant cut in half. If you understand that reference, I applaud you. Basically, don't be a DICK. For kids again. Why? Because we need to share decision making. This leads into evidence-based outcomes, and we're using evidence from people's lived experiences and what they do and how they succeed. Adaptive. Co-design should be experimental. It's aiming at innovation. More people in the room, more diverse backgrounds, more ideas you're going to get. And using these feedback loops, you get quicker, faster, more process, and it's a bit of trial and error. Doing something this way and that way, you will eventually get to a good outcome. I also want to touch on a bit on social learning theory. It is 4 stages, and it kind of ties back into co-design because it touches on knowing your people, sharing knowledge, having some retention and reproduction and motivation. So we're getting the attention of people in our teams and around us to understand what the model behavior is, and retention. So why are they doing that? Why are we imitating what they do? What are we thinking? So if you're working someone who is doing something wrong, but you need to improve that, you need to understand why, and hopefully pair with them or buddy with them to want to change the motivation. Reproduction, we want to change this behavior, and using the many as one, and having the baseline of acceptable behavior should do it. Motivation is a key thing in what we do, and trying to win over individuals. Kotter's 8-step model. I also want to touch on this because it does feed into it. It's something from project management, which goes back to cybersecurity strategy. How do we get to the outcome that we want that's secure and actually winning people over? It's creating that urgency, forming that powerful coalition, creating the vision for change. What is your actual vision? Is it actually being secure, or just having someone have a good password? It could be as small and as big as you want it. It's communicating that vision. How can we communicate with people if we don't know what they do and what are their motivators? It's empowering action, creating those change agents. We want people to actually be security champions of change, so they can actually, so you can see that they do the right thing, and then they ask others to do the right thing with them. Creating those quick wins. It's kind of like the whole snowball effect if you're paying off debt, which I might be. If you pay the small one off and then you get it and you feel really good about it and keep following on with that, and then you build on that change. So once you're in a really good groove, you just expand and you get that momentum. And then making it stick. How do you make sure that it sticks if you don't have those first 7 parts of it? Now we've got the theory out of the way, the fun bit, the IT security teams. It's trust. What we do in cybersecurity is actually really hard. It's really risky. So some of the things I've noticed that as an IT security specialist, we face the challenge of balancing operations and ties with risk mitigation. So we don't really trust people. Or if we do, we have to understand the risk behind it. Security specialists are more risk aware and careful about the information security compared to the general population. I don't share my password with anyone. I didn't even have PayWave on my phone until probably 2 years ago. We actually focus on the security events that happen in our day-to-day, and they actually interpret on how we view relationships. Sometimes it's actually very hard to get within the cybersecurity industry or ecosystem. This is where you kind of need an in to get into cybersecurity. There's something I've noticed, that it's hard to actually be one of the community unless you know someone to get you in. That's how I got into cybersecurity. A man asked me, "No, do you want a job?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" And now here I'm speaking about 2 years later. And it's very important to do that, because like, it's trust. If I can't trust you to do something well, why would I ask you to do it in the first place? So this is how we should develop our co-design around it. And this is where we finish the academic theory of it. Everyone thinks my ideas suck because I am security and I come out with them with the baton to do it properly, do it more secure. And if you know the carrot and the stick, sometimes the stick doesn't really work, so the organization doesn't want to listen to you. How do we do that? I do have a case study, but I do see a co-worker here, so I can't talk about that one. I have made up one. It's basically, if we have a password, I think everyone understands what password complexity is, how people don't actually want to do passwords. So Alpha Corp is a leading enterprise in the financial sector, recognized for growing importance of robust security measures to safeguard sensitive data, mitigate the risk of unauthorized access. That's the problem statement. Despite having a password policy in place, it actually doesn't work with the users. Why doesn't it actually work? Well, you know, people don't actually like passwords. Not many people know what a password manager is unless you work in cybersecurity or you do something around risk. I've talked to people who work in schools, they don't know what it is, and there's reluctance to actually use a password manager. We all know it's a big problem, so what do we do if we have this problem? If it was me, I would do a first Google search. What is a strong password policy? As we can see here, you need MFA, password restrictions, at least 8 characters, never reuse your password, which I probably have done. CrikeyCon 2024, it has been there, might be CrikeyCon 2025 next year. You have to have a long password, hopefully longer than 12 characters. Limit password attempts. You know, if you ever go to change your password, suddenly it works after you reset it. Changing it, but if you do that as an end user, how do you think they feel? You're interrupting their workflow. A user wants to come in, log on, start doing the job, but you're bogging them down with all of these different complexities that they don't really understand why. I think we all understand why. So we do this, it's super complex, it's hard to use, and if we just do this without actually engaging with the user, we will have a really strong password policy, but then we would look like this. For us, it's great. We've done the policy. We've met our criteria, the controls are in place, for whatever framework. But if you're the baby looking upwards, you just see a lot of brown holes. Like, it's hard, it's disruptive. I hate being disruptive to what I do. I personally have to log in and use at least 5 different MFAs. I log into my computer, MFA code. I log into my jump box, MFA code. Jeez, and I'm a security person, I understand for it, and it's a struggle, man. So why would we do that? We are part of the problem, but we are also the entire problem. So like, why do it? So I think going back to it, co-design, sitting around with people, understanding, educating them, iterating through that process, working through what the challenges are, what do they need, making them understand what is going on. Like, so I talked to Jane from HR. I'm like, hey, Jane, you need to put a password manager in. Making it exciting for her and a bit of a game. So she wants to do it, and she comes to me, she tells me that she's using password manager. I know, I've won her over. She's in HR, she's going to tell her friends, I'm using this password manager. Makes my job easier because I can have super long, complex passwords, and it's copy and paste. So that's how the strength of co-design, because you're actually going through that process or iteration design, you're talking to people, understanding their issues, creating those relationships so they can come to you and super strong password policy is 1.30, but she's also teaching her other people down the road or sitting beside us. You are creating those champions of change. So sometimes it's all just a good call-out pitch. Everyone likes a good beer. If you go to talk to her and have a lunch with her and have a beer with her and talk about the problem and solutions, that's how I get winnings at work. But the problems with this approach, it is very complex. You can start off simple with 3 people, 3 lines, and then somehow you end up with 14 people with 91 lines with all differing opinions. If person A talks to person C and C talks to person G, and then they go back to person A and they all have different opinions, what the fuck are you doing? So probably I would limit it. Talking to select people who have good knowledge about what they're doing and are actually invested is how you're going to get that big win towards it. Also, not everyone does well with agile design or that quick feedback loop. Sometimes they need to take a little bit of a while to talk about it and actually work through different problems. So it can be a little bit challenging them. It's a bit of a different way of thinking as well. Sometimes we like working in isolation. So coming around to that is a bit of a mind shift. So why this talk again? I do want to go back to this image. Cybersecurity people, we have limited resourcing. We have little to no influence. We have little control of what we do. We get notifications, alerts all the time. So we have little brain capacity. Stress actually makes you dumber. So in our job is high stress. How do we do that and do it well when we have limited or lean resourcing? We need to talk to people. We need to talk to the network experts. We need to talk to the infrastructure experts. We need to talk to the GRC person to actually help drive some of these policy changes and also lead that there. So I would like to say some of the key takeaways. Hopefully some of this will mesh with you. It's establishing that collaborative environment that encourages innovative solutions. To have those diverse perspectives on cybersecurity strategies. It's also facilitating the continuous learning that we all do in cybersecurity, building those strong relationships with your teammates and your stakeholders and your consumers as well. It's also empowering individuals with cybersecurity knowledge, even if they are not cybersecurity people. I do go back to HR. Jane, she's a good friend of mine in a different organisation. But I was able to help her be more secure and saved her from a password spray. And she's always been thankful for me and always gets me a nice coffee. And also creating this resilience culture within your organisation and not being so fixed in your mindset and having that growth mindset, not to get too buzzwordy or jargon heavy, but having that mindset where you're open to change and you're always continuous learning. It comes from co-design just by those 5 principles. And I would like to say thank you. Well, let me rant for about 20 or so minutes about co-design. Where to find me, that's my email, LinkedIn, and somewhere hopefully I want to be in a paddock over Easter. So yeah.
Everyone, round of applause for Lynore.